Well, howdy, Joseph.
Hi, hello, how are you?
We heard the news,
We're quite enthused.
and the only thing to do
What should we do?
is strum this guitar
And sing to the stars.
and serenade you.
You survived, and that's true. I thought I'd send a little wish to you.
That is some mighty fine fiddling. But hey, let's pick it up.
All right.
That's more like it. Yeehaw!
Play it for Joseph.
All right, now where were we? Okay, you're still standing, and that's pretty great.
Joseph!
You know what? You kicked its butt. It's time to celebrate.
Joseph!
Wurzel jingle jangle.
It's time to do-si-do.
So grab yourself a partner and let's see go.
Cause it's a
Jingle jangle here and a jingle jangle there. A jingle jangle inspiration everywhere. A jingle jangle here and a jingle jangle there.
jingle jangle inspiration everywhere.
All right. That's how you celebrate.
Hi, this is Penn. Penn Jillette, Penn and Teller. Big guy does magic, smaller guy next to me. He does magic too. He doesn't talk that much. I want to talk about Joseph Jaffe is not famous. And Joseph Jaffe is not famous. Joseph Jaffe is wicked not famous. Joseph Jaffe is superlatively not famous. And for good and sufficient reason. I mean, maybe his guests are famous. Maybe his guests are famous. He gets some famous people on his guests, but Joseph Jaffe himself is not famous. That's the important part. You can have famous guests and still not be famous. And if you want an example of that, well, Joseph Jaffe would be a really good example. Teller would do a better job at a talk show, and Teller doesn't talk, which you'd think would be one of the major qualifications of being on a talk show and not being famous. What's that, Teller? Oh, yeah, Teller says, Joseph Jaffe, not famous. Love you. Peace.
A spring in your step. There is a twinkle in your eye.
I can throw a rhyme down for you real quick. Yes, they call me Thrill. They say that I'm the man. You disagree? How could you? Let me make you understand.
Should we bring her on the show? Can anybody find me? And there she is.
Fresh as some bread. Pull right from the oven. When you feel rejected, you get some I get loving.
Take on me.
She looks wonderful. Mom looks amazing.
Somebody to. Okay, more bugger off now. I've got to show it to you. Love.
Like that?
Joseph Jaffe, ladies and gentlemen.
You just made the new intro of the show. Yes. It is June 2nd, 2022. How the hell are you? The door of my temporary office, studio, global studio, is ajar because, as you can see over that shoulder, Sammy Jaffe is in the house, and I've put him to sleep already. In fact, they say that this show is an instant cure for insomnia. Let's have a little look at Sammy. He likes to bark from time to time. He does not like it when the door is closed, especially when he can see through it. So we've left it ajar for him to come in and out as he so chooses. Hello to my mom, who was featured in the intro to the show. She is watching. Emmanuel is here, and he said, "Let's go." Emmanuel said, "Are you offering any Jaffe coin?" To which I replied, "Of course I am." There it is, your QR code. Get yourself a little bit of the Jaffe. Everyone needs a little bit of Jaffe. Now, I had what an amazing Will Pemble on the show yesterday, and I don't know why, but I think I spoke to him about. I bought an Ember mug. This is an Ember mug, not Amber, which is my daughter. Let's try not to spill. You see the little light over there? There it is. This mug keeps my coffee warm at the temperature that I so choose or desire. Fallen in love with this mug. Will gave such a great line to it yesterday. He said, I'm not allowed to buy any coffee accessory or apparel that costs more than a year's worth of coffee. So enough said, but I do love my Ember mug at the moment. And, there's no affiliate code. Go get one if you want one. I don't care. In fact, I care if you like your coffee warm. But we're actually going to dive straight into our seated soliloquy. And I always, as always, I can't wait to hear what Gary Laney, the famous Gary Laney, I might add, on the Not Famous show, has to say about some of these elements in the soliloquy. This morning, as many of you know, I attend coffee at 5 a.m. in Discord as part of the Giraffe Tower and NFT collection that I belong to. And today we were going to talk about our goals, our hopes, our dreams. And we were told to prepare a vision board. Now, I don't know what a vision board is. I've never had one. I've never used one. And I even said today that I find it to be a little woo-woo, which, by the way, I've just realized woo-woo is a trigger word. If you really want to upset someone or piss someone off, you tell them that it's woo-woo. But I went with it. And I'll share maybe next week. In fact, I think I might even start my show off with this image. But the image in question is my head superimposed on an HBO canvas. Actually, it belonged to not me, but it belongs to Conan O'Brien, who is moving to HBO. And this was my manifestation. This was my dream. My dream is for this show to be picked up, whether it's HBO, whether it's Apple TV Plus, whether it's Netflix, Prime, Hulu, CNBC, CNN. But I won't stop until the show is shared by more people, because I believe that the show is not just good enough, but it's great enough. In fact, it is the greatest show that more people are not watching. And the thing about a vision board and the thing about manifesting it is that it's bloody scary. It's scary to put yourself out there. It's scary to launch the Alpha Collective. It's scary as hell, because what if you fail? If you fail, you fail spectacularly, and you fail publicly. And you could say that it could be the biggest embarrassment of your life to put it out there, to people think he's deluding himself. He's insane. He's delusional. It will never happen. But one of the crazy things about putting it out there in front of so many people is that suddenly people can actually start, and this is what happened today, rooting for you, wanting you to succeed, willing you to succeed. Today, we're going to talk about leadership with Gary. And, Tom Peters will say the goal of a leader is to create more leaders. But I think maybe the goal of a leader is to allow everyone else around them to express their hopes, their dreams, their vision, and then figure out collectively and collaboratively how to make it possible. And as was said in this vision quest this morning, minus the ayahuasca, I suppose, but I did have coffee in my Ember mug. You never know who's watching. You never know who's listening. You never know who's out there who knows someone who knows someone who knows someone that can actually make it happen. As I even said and manifested today, I just need a chance. I just need a foot in the door. I just need someone to say, you know what, we'll put him on at 2 a.m. on a Sunday when almost no one is watching. What's the worst that can happen? He ends up embarrassing himself because no one's watching. But we'll see what happens. And I'm going to try and be much more explicit, much more, not just put my heart on the line, put my neck on the line. Why? Because by doing that, I feel it is going to be able to help everyone else. And I hope it does. And I hope this can act and inspire other people as well. So one of the things that I'm doing, for example, in the same spirit of putting things out there, is I've been able to use my creator coin to actually allow you to take on different roles, to become super fans, to assume a role of super fan. One of the things that I'm doing in that regard is turning my super fans into speaker agents. I've taken my speaking, my virtual keynotes, my North America keynotes, my global keynotes, and I've put them on to my creator coin site as NFTs. And what I'm actually doing now is I want to turn people that have seen me speak, heard me speak, seen the work product, bought the work product before, to now have an opportunity to buy me at a discount and sell me at a profit and keep 100% of the profit. It's another risk. It's another vision manifestation. What if no one buys the NFT? Who the hell cares? I'll move on to something else. But what if it works? What if it works? All of these thoughts swirling in my mind, in my heart, in my stomach, in my gut today are inspired in part by today's guest, by Gary Laney. You know, when I start to think about leading with authenticity, leading with integrity, a concept of strategic influence, as opposed to people that attempt to influence based on nothing more than their fans, their friends, their followers, fake influence, tactical influence. I want to know about strategic influence. I want to know about Gary Laney. Gary Laney is CEO of Success Masters. He's a best-selling author and serial entrepreneur of 20, count them, 20 businesses. Industries included high-tech, SaaS-related software, business networking, online media, e-commerce. The man does it all. As a dynamic speaker, Gary has been recognized as a top presenter, motivating tens of thousands of entrepreneurs, professionals, and salespeople. Now, prior to his entrepreneurial run, Gary spent 25 years as an executive in corporate high-tech and commercial publishing. He's known for his ability to turn around businesses and create dramatic revenue growth. Gary has a triple major MBA from Northwestern Kellogg in finance, marketing, and policy. Hell, I don't even have a single MBA. Gary, welcome to the show.
Joe, nice to be with you. Thank you. How are you?
You're a triple threat.
Triple threat. Threes are constant in my life. I don't know what's going on with that number, but
well, wait a second. So how does that mean you did 3 MBAs or you just majored in 3 different subjects?
Yeah, three majors. So I have a marketing degree undergrad and Spanish. And then when I got my MBA, I had a business undergrad. So they said I could skip all the electives. Or excuse me, skip all the standard classes and go right to electives. So from semester 1, I decided, hey, I've got enough time. I've got 2 years. I decided to do the 2-year program. I'm going to do 3 majors. So I did marketing again. I did finance, and I did policy, which is kind of a general management approach. But it was fun. It was a great opportunity.
And from all that book smarts, what would you say? Because I'm teaching at the moment at NYU and Western Connecticut State University. And I often find myself saying to my students, okay, this you're never going to use again. Ignore it. In fact, I won't test you on it. I'm a very an orthodox professor, but this, trust me, you're going to take this away. You're going to quote this. If you implement this axiom or this idea, you're going to make a lot of money. What do you recall through your MBA, your triple MBA? Something that stuck with you that you took away and you've absolutely been not only to implement it, but to great success in your life?
Hey, well, the great thing about an MBA program and a business school is that they have a case-oriented kind of a style, and that can be flexible. Northwestern was different than Harvard, Stanford, some of the ones that require only case study. They were kind of flexible, letting you do projects instead. So the one thing I came away from is that, hey, listen, if you want to accomplish something, you have to get involved in the business. You have to actively be involved in the planning, the strategic element of it, and you have to put a plan to use to see if it's actually going to work. Theory is great until you try to use it, and then you find out, well, that doesn't quite work in the real world the way they talked about it. But at Northwestern, I was really gratified that we could have situations where we could get involved as student consultants, create a project, help a business, actually do something to help somebody improve their business. We did that multiple times in my majors. And then the other aspect was that we had group orientation. So I'm very big on collaboration, really huge on process. And so, anything that's systematic that you can reuse, you can redo, you can repeat, that's what I'm all about. And that's probably the main thing I learned during my program experience.
So systematic process. I actually came up with an acronym that I've included in several of my books called COST, which is cultural, organizational, structural, strategic, and tactical. I just messed up my own acronym. Cultural, organizational, strategic, and tactical. And I basically make the case that obviously everything begins with strategy. And my message always is, but then it works in two directions. One is obviously the strategy informs the tactics, and you move into the ability to implement and execute. But all of that will fall on deaf ears if not for the organizational structure and the process that allows you to embed, to streamline, to institutionalize, to scale, to roll out. And then, of course, I make one more point, which is, and all of that will be short-lived if there isn't the cultural buy-in. If it, the structure, you can almost look like the host in a body, and you've got the nerves, you've got the bones. But for me, that something that I never really have quite mastered myself professionally, but something that I've come to learn to love, respect, and realize how important it is.
Well, I heard your introduction for your show today, and you talked about leadership. What is leadership? And at a very, very early age in my life, in my leadership kind of development, I knew a guy named Stephen Covey who wrote a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And Stephen has, if you've ever read the book, have you read the book?
I mean, many books as well, but yes, I mean, Covey, and you met him?
Oh, I not only met him, he was a mentor. So Stephen, I call him Stephen because I knew him on a first-hand basis. Stephen was first an author that I read when I was 19, a book that I was enthralled with called Spiritual Roots of Human Relations. And then later he became a professor of mine when I was going to college. And then more importantly, he became an advisor to a company I was working for. I was working up and going up the ranks, and became a VP of sales at some certain point, and got to see the 7 Habits, in planning stage before he ever published the book, before he ever became associated with Oprah. And so, his 7 Habits are legendary. I mean, he's become world renowned. But more importantly, I think the way he starts off talking about how to begin with the end in mind. You talk about strategy. I think strategy begins in your mind. It starts with your vision. It starts with your needs, your wants, your cares about what you want to do, and the people that are involved with you. So he always said everything is developed and created spiritually before it's ever created physically. I thought it was an interesting concept. So that means you really literally have to think about it, get excited about something, lay it out in your mind, and then put it on paper as a strategy. So I think strategy is second. And then thirdly, the tactics, the planning, the people, the logistics, and then really good follow-up, really good analysis of evaluation, assessment, so you can see if you're doing something right. If you are, how you can repeat it, continue to do something with it. And then ultimately that culture you talked about, if people don't believe in what you're talking about, if they don't believe in you, if they don't want to follow you, if you can't get them motivated, if there's no purpose in what you're doing, it's all about money, it's going to falter. It's just going to fall flat. I really think that's a key.
Yeah, it's so funny that you would talk about spiritual. I mean, going back to woo-woo, right? Everyone's looking for the.
Is that a real word? Is woo-woo a real word?
I mean, it is now.
Okay.
But woo, no, but what I love about it, it's so unexpected. You know, when it's not something you would think in a dry, in a, in a oftentimes a commoditized or productized environment. And the spiritual, the heart, the soul, which aligns with purpose. And what you realize is at the end of the day, you can check all the boxes, you can follow the manual to a T, you can implement the processes, to the nth degree or detail. But if you don't have the why, if you don't have the purpose, if you don't have the heart, if you don't have the soul, there's something missing. And maybe that just comes back, Gary, to leadership, but to human beings, that this is, was, and always will be about talent.
Yeah. When I think of the leader, I think of the authentic you. If a true leader really is someone that connects with him or herself and can relay that passion, that vision to someone else who would then buy into it. And I think it's really critical that you share your vision and get people to participate, to collaborate, and get involved, so that it's leadership is a team. It's not a single person. You can't be a leader without people. You can't be a leader without consensus. You can't be a leader and accomplish things unless people are becoming semi-leaders with you. You just can't do it. It's not possible. So I think that's important.
It's a hell of an interesting point as well, right? Leadership is a team. It's another. It almost seems like a contradiction, because and the other thing that strikes me when you talk about authentic leaders and authentic you, well, everyone's different. So have we, done ourselves a I don't want to say a disservice, but maybe by trying to bucket leaders into benevolent leaders and servant leaders, and certainly, what was it? Was it L Chainsaw Dunlap? There was a different kind of leadership. Was that a not a mistake, but just not as one dimensional, if you will, that we bucketed leaders into categories as opposed to actually celebrating the individual points of difference in the personality that made them authentically them?
Well, I'm going to answer that in a different way you maybe expect me to, and that is that there's a craze right now with startups. Anyone can start a business these days. They don't have to go through college. They don't have to get promoted. They don't have to advance in their career. You can, at nighttime, you can start create a website in minutes, and you start selling a product or a service, and nobody can stop you from doing that. And so leaders today are much more exposed than they used to be. So if you think you're going to pretend to be a leader, sit behind your desk and set out a bunch of directives without any responsibility for what you're doing, and not caring about the people that are involved, you're just fooling yourself. So again, I think you're right. I think this team thing is critical to understand, because people that work as a team, and the leader that comes behind it and says, okay, listen, I want to create this strategy bottom up, not top down. What does that mean? Well, you all tell me your goals, and then I'm going to look at them. We're going to critique them. If they're not where they need to be for us to succeed as a business, we need to talk about it. But if they're helpful, then let's combine our efforts. Let's combine our planning and our strategy, and let's come up with something. And I'm as a leader I'm going to be here to facilitate, not direct. I'm going to be here to help inspire and motivate, hopefully, for you to be able to reach your potential, and for us as a company. I think it's a really different time today than it used to be 20 years ago or 30 years ago.
Well, for sure. And, I was just jotting down at the same time that anyone can start a company, as you said, but not anyone can actually grow a company or lead a company. I think, immediately and I was going to say, just look at all these documentaries at the moment on television. And I mean, there's good and bad and ugly, right? Whether it was, we'll put Elizabeth Holmes to the side for a moment, but the WeWork documentary, Uber as well, which is at the end, there were many things questionable or debatable or wrong, but what we weren't seeing was leadership at all, amongst two people that almost fell or stumbled into a leadership position?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg had never been a leader, that's for sure. He came out of college and came up with a great idea that that turned into something that's been world recognized. So yeah, you're right. I mean, listen, not all leaders are the same. So I think that's actually a good thing. I think there's some importance to have characteristics and personality in the leader. But I think the principles are pretty much the same though. Every time I've been involved in a business, there's consistency in what leaders need to do to be able to have success, to stay in their position, and to help the company grow. And that requires that person to be a good listener at the beginning. So if I come into a company and I'm just starting out and I don't have respect, I don't have following, I don't have recognition, I don't have the reputation as the leader you're hoping for. My objective in the beginning is just to listen, sit down, do nothing but be open-eared, learn from you, because you're much further ahead in this company than I am as an employee. And I'd like to understand your perspective, what your challenges are, what your opportunities are, what you think we should be doing differently. And then obviously I'm not going to react to all those things, but I'm going to take it all in, and we're going to come together as a group, and we're going to collectively come up with something that we all believe in. It's a much better way to gather following and interest in you as a leader than to start mandating. Say, hey, this is what I've seen in my past. Listen, in the beginning, in the old days, leader came in and they would clean shop. They would dismantle the existing organization to a certain degree and bring in their own people, because they had experience, they had success with these people they've worked with in the past. And I still think some of that is going on, but at the same time, you can't expect to come in and not affect in a negative way a company if you do that. You have to start by being a good listener, be a team player. You bring yourself down to their level at the very beginning so they can understand that you can relate to what they're talking about, what they're doing, and then start contributing as just a worker bee in the company. And then, the respect will happen. They'll think that you care about them. I remember going to dinners I've managed about 1,500 salespeople in my lifetime. I remember going to many dinners where, that's when people start opening up to you. You sit next to somebody and they'll tell you, hey, the things I don't really like, things I think are really a problem in the company, especially if they start drinking a little bit, and then you hear everything. And so leadership is all about you becoming someone that is trusted. Authentic means you are showing the authentic you. People see you for who you are, not this fabricated image. And then next of all, you're a person that cares about the people, their plans, their contributions, and what's going on. If you can become one of the team members first, and then inspire, motivate, and add purpose, I think you've got a good plan.
No, I think there'd be a pushback on that idea of like bringing yourself down to the level, or another
Okay.
concept of vulnerability that people would say, and certainly it's antiquated, it's out of date thinking. But how do you respond to that, to that pushback about demonstrating too much vulnerability, which can come across as weak, fraternizing with subordinates, etc. How do you respond to that?
Well, listen, there's a fine line between becoming chummy with the employees and becoming a contributor. So my first job when I first get involved in the company is to come in and say, where can I contribute? What do I have as an asset that I can help? I'm here to solve problems. I'm here to inspire. I'm here to help people reach their potential. So I didn't see a lot of pushback, Joe, when I did that. I would go in and I'm really good with clients. I'm really good at helping close deals. I'm really good at navigating through those hierarchies to get to the right person that can help champion something that you need to sell to the company. Well, that's what I'm talking about. So if I can come in as a contributor, at the same time listen, because people don't get listened to very often, and then recognize it, but then not be reactive. Okay, if you're reactive to everything, you'll become I don't think you'll have the respect you're looking for. I think people then will think you don't have the leadership you need. But I think if you come in and you contribute, you recognize what their needs or their concerns are, and then come together in a collaborative style, so that we can, as a group, agree to a plan that then we all go forward with. And I think then you have a different outcome.
It's such an important point, by the way, this idea of listening without responding or listening without reacting. Sometimes, of course, a response is needed or necessitated or asked for. But we have to almost train ourselves or unlearn the ability to have that immediate reaction. And I mean, I've had so many people on the show that have spoken about the art of listening. And the thing is, you can't, in fact, even last week, I think the insight that you can't listen and react at the same time. It is not possible. And so immediately when you're trying to think of your response or the next question, guess what? You've stopped listening. It's a very important point. Lubna is here, by the way. Just want to say hello to her. And Brian Piper is here. And he said, I love this. I need to practice this more with my boss and my wife. I'm not sure if they're the same person or not, but I have met Brian and his wife. And I would suggest that this man certainly does listen a lot. I think he's being way too kind. Now, Gary, I always try and find quotes. I did not use this quote, but I kind of wish I had, but I quickly found it and put it into and teed it up. Leaders who don't listen will eventually be surrounded by people who have nothing to say. Andy Stanley. What a great quote. I think it just speaks exactly to what you're saying and also to what you're not saying, which is probably the worst thing in a company is a company where there's just, crickets.
I like that definition. Well, listen, I think it's listening, but there's a difference between actively listening and someone who is in the background listening and preparing their next statement. I think you just said that. So I learned early on that, I've always had these discussions with my groups about trust. What is trust? How do you develop it? And more importantly, is there a way to expedite trust? Most people will say, no, it takes time. It's a process. You have to go through it. And sometimes it can take years. But I've learned through active listening, by trying to identify things that in this person you're speaking to has in their life that you can help solve, you'll have some form of instant trust by doing that kind of thing. So being an active listener means you're proactive in listening to find a way to be able to help them in some way after this active listening you had.
You're saying so many things that, to me, and I don't say this, lightly or gratuitously, you're guest number 377 since March of 2020, when a certain bat got eaten allegedly, and so I've heard a lot in 377 interviews, but I'm hearing so many original thoughts today, which as an academic and as a teacher and as an author makes me giddy with happiness. But this idea of trust as well. I mean, all conventional thinking says it takes a lifetime to master or to build and an instant to break. What you're saying is, guess what? If you actually know what you're doing, if you're a Jedi, you can actually build it rather quickly. And I love that idea. And if you think about it, I mean, we meet people often in life, and our gut tells us immediately whether we are more inclined to want to trust them or not. So why shouldn't it be true in business?
Yeah, that's really my question, and that's why I've had so many discussions over the years about trust. People don't talk about it enough because they're afraid to, and they think that there's a definition they can't the standard is too high to meet up to, that I just can't live up to that standard. And if you ask, so John Hewitt is a person that I interviewed for my book. He's an icon in the tax preparation world. He started Jackson Hewitt. He started Liberty Tax. I mean, he's an amazing guy. In this industry for 50 years. And if you ask him what trust is, he'll say, "Do what you want. Do what you say you're going to do." That's all he says. And you can spend hours talking about trust, the different facets and the sides of it, but that's his definition: is just do what you say you're going to do. And And then people can start trusting you, believing that they might be able to tell you things that they were afraid to tell you. They might be able to give you the support that you need. Interviews I've had, by the way, including the one I had yesterday with a guy named David Meltzer, who was, you probably heard of him before. He's a famous speaker. He was the CEO of Lee Steinberg, sports agency that the film Jerry Maguire was inspired by. I didn't know him, but I wanted to know him, and I wanted to interview him. And he's agreed to be in my book, my next edition. I was simply introduced to him by someone that trusts me. And that's through an email, the three of us. And he simply thought that was all that was required. And he said, I would love to participate. This is a guy that has, millions of people in the world that know him and could do anything he wants. But he decided, because of that recommendation, because of that introduction, that he would trust me enough to say, yes, let's have an interview. And then it took about 2 weeks to get the interview together. We had it yesterday. It was fabulous. He was vulnerable during my interview. And the interview took on a different level than I kind of expected it to, but I was happy that it turned out that way. And then he invited me to a VIP party next week in LA. So, talk about instant credibility because of somebody else that trusted me. It was really, really remarkable.
Yeah, I love that story, and just tell him if he's got an extra +1, I can be your date. So need to
Right
get to
on.
LA. Haven't been there in a while. For some reason for the last 2 years, haven't been traveling as much as I used to. There is another thing that you talk about, and we'll get to the idea of integrity in a moment. But just to let people know, the book is called The Power of Strategic Influence. It is a national bestseller, and you need to go out and buy it. I mean, The Power of Strategic Influence, 10 Success Factors of Highly Influential Leaders. And a quick question before we get into integrity, because I love to play with words. Why the qualifier of strategic influence? Why not just the power of influence? What is differentiating or differentiated by saying strategic influence?
Listen, I wanted to write about influence, but influence today is so different than it used to be 20 years ago. So the social media influence is not what I wanted to talk about. It's not what I wanted to teach about. It's important. And social and influencers, that you can buy, pay for, rent, if you will, to say something nice about your product, to promote something, is not strategic. It's very transactional. So meaning that if I had enough money, and I don't think I do, to hire The Rock to promote one of my books, he would definitely bring attention to my book. The problem is I don't know The Rock. I don't have any experience with him. He's not from my industry. He doesn't understand the concepts, I don't think, of what I teach, because I've been teaching these in this industry for 35 years. So strategic means that it's well fitted, it's relational, there's a relationship, and the person relates to what you're talking about, what you're trying to promote. So when I'm going to a relationship, I want it to be strategic. I want it to be long-term. I want it to be meaningful. And I want the person that's involved to have the ability to also gain value from it. So it's a win-win environment. It's strategic in the sense that we're trying to accomplish something together, whether it's part-time, full-time, whatever time. And so that was critical to me to distinguish, to differentiate the kind of influence that I wanted to teach about, that I've been teaching for 35 years, versus just standard influence. Influence is it's in the eye of the beholder. And so I think that was the reason.
And it's a very, very important point, because the idea of fitted, right, also implies that we're actually solving a specific problem. We have a goal, we have a directive, we have an objective. There is method to the madness. We often, when I used to run interactive media in the agency world, we would always say there were tactics in search of strategy or solutions to non-existent problems. So that's the fitted part. The relational part, of course, is long-term and brings in trust again, and also brings in the fact that we don't talk about this enough. I would challenge Mr. Zuckerberg and his cronies to include a little barometer called a social capital or social currency barometer, that every single time somebody says this recommendation or review or transaction was on the money and moved us forward, was fitted, you know, it goes up, and every time it ends up being completely a shill or a bad fit, it goes down. But we don't do that. Instead, we just hide behind these social media metrics, to your point.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about that. And listen, it's an old concept, but it's a new concept because the new generations are growing up on social media. They live on their phone. They don't really get together like we used to. It used to be a requirement. If you wanted to do business, you had to meet. You had to, and you had to physically sign a document. Now it's all electronic, and I'm not saying it's bad because I think it really helps expedite the business process. But I think that we have to still have some element of physical contact, and that's how you can grow a relationship much faster. So I teach about 6 building blocks of a trusted partnership in my book. So and you'll find trust and giving back throughout as a running theme throughout my book, both of those concepts. But trust to me means that you have to find. Listen, I helped co-found a company called Trustegrity, which is a national business networking company, and I sold it during COVID. But what was critical about that company is that we tried to say that relationships was our objective, not referrals, not just doing business. Because if that's your mindset, it might be a one-time transactional thing, and you put a lot of effort into it, and then you don't get to leverage that opportunity you had to become closer, more fitted with this relationship, and to grow something that could become long-term. So trusted partnerships have to start with 2 people or 2 organizations that have common goals. And then secondly, probably the more critical part is, do they see the same path to getting there? If we both want to get somewhere, but we don't agree on how we're going to get there, we're not going to probably make this marriage work. And so as a networker, if you want to put me in that role, I think you need to be connecting with people every single day of your life, but you need to be looking for those special opportunities, those special people you can connect with, have chemistry with, and that have the same ideals about how are you going to get somewhere. Then you can become strategic partners, and then you just have to develop the trust and get experience together, and then learn how to repeat the process. And I think you have a really good opportunity as a partnership that way.
Right, and there's such an important point about this idea of commonality and shared purpose. We hear, now everyone, it's a buzzword. It was, is, always will be. How effectively we implement community is debatable, but the essence of community is about common goals and shared purposes, and being on the same page, on the same path to achieve the same goals together. And so I had Doc Searles on the show earlier this week, and I'm actually quite proud of myself, patting myself on the back, like literally, because, he's like my hero. He wrote, and so is Philip Kotler at Kellogg.
Okay.
And he said markets are conversations, and I kind of tweaked that, and I said today markets are collaborations. But again, it's this idea of collaboration, of being able to work. That's why I love what you said about leadership, about this idea of how can I help you do your job better? How can I contribute? Very, very important point. Now, Gary, another thing that you talk about is, we spoke about authenticity, but the other one is integrity. And this time, the quote that I did, I was looking for quotes on authentic and leadership and leadership with integrity. And this is what I found. So this is a Zig Ziglar quote for you. You've probably met him too.
I have met him. He's trained my salespeople, yes. And I know his son, Tom. He was in my book.
So Stephen, first name, Zig, and who was, I am, and now I can say Gary. I've met Gary too.
Sure.
But this is the quote. It is true that integrity alone won't make you a leader, but without integrity, you will never be one. So tell us about integrity. Tell us about, and tell us also about, is there a difference between, in this context, between trust and integrity from a leadership standpoint?
Well, listen, the result of being honest, doing what you say you're going to do is integrity. And then people trust you and feel like you're honest enough to be able to repeat an experience with. Zig Ziglar is one of my favorites. I mean, he has so many great quotes. And the great thing about his quotes is they represent him as a person. His son, Tom, I interviewed for the book, and I'll never forget the experience he told me. So I said, what is it like to grow up being the son of a legend like Zig Ziglar? And Tom is a legend in himself. I mean, he's amazing. But he said, well, my dad was special. He said, when he would speak before crowds, sometimes of 10,000, people, sometimes in a stadium, almost every time he'd spoken on that same topic, that same subject, many times. But before he went to speak, he would prepare like no one I've ever heard of before. Sometimes he would prepare for weeks, but let's say that he prepared for days before the event. I mean, dedicated full-time effort to prepare for a topic that he's spoken on many times before, that he's memorized and recited many times before. And Tom said it's because he knew that every audience was different, every congregation, every speaking assignment was to a different crowd with a different purpose, with a different set of products, with different ideals, with different mission statements. So he said, I had to come in, he said his dad had to go in and customize and make it real for the people he was speaking to. What was more important, he believed in God, Zig Ziglar did, and I do as well. And he said that at the end of the presentation, sometimes when he spoke to our groups, I mean, he spent the entire day speaking. We'd have a 3-hour block, we'd have a break, 3-hour block, and then he would sit on the stage and talk to these salesmen. He wasn't like the highfalutin guy that would, speak and then run off the stage. The integrity part of it is that he cared about delivering the right message to the audience, the people he's going to, so that they felt like what he was giving them was real to them. And at the end, what he really cared about is if God, in his mind, approved on what he did that day. He didn't care about the applause, the accolades, the kudos. Tom literally said, my dad didn't care about that. He asked himself the question, was what I did today, was it good enough for God to approve it? I thought it was really a fascinating concept. And whether you believe in God or not, or whether you have people that you respect, think of the person that you respect the most and say, would my mother approve of what I delivered today? And would the people in charge that hired me approve of what I delivered today? That's what he cared about. And that's what he prepared for. So mentally, mindset, and preparation wise, he really cared about what he was doing.
Gary, for God's sake, my mother is watching today. So,
Cool.
hopefully she refrains from what she really thinks. But I was thinking as you were talking, that's one hell of an evaluation form. You better make sure that you pass that,
Right on. Yeah.
How likely are you to recommend this speaker to a friend, 0 to 10? You need to be a God promoter as opposed to a God detractor. But yeah, I mean, it's a great litmus test, to be sure.
So that's what integrity means to me. Do the people that evaluate you think that you are full of integrity and honesty? I mean, you can think it yourself. You can think you're going to do what you're going to say you're going to do, but in the end, did you really serve the purpose of what you were trying to do?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to one of the things that I've been saying lately. I spend a lot of time now in the whole, emerging Web3 world. And there is just so much, they call it FUD, which stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. There is, it is the antithesis of the leader, the authentic leader, and the leader who leads with integrity, because, as you say, anyone can launch a collection, anyone can launch a startup. What you don't see are people that can make a promise and then keep the promise and deliver on the promise. So a couple things that I've been playing around with is instead of I'm sure you would approve of this, and if not, I can just mute you. I'm just kidding. I basically said recently, instead of under promising and first of all, nobody wants to over promise and under deliver. Everyone wants to under promise and over deliver. I said, but instead, how about just promising and delivering? How about that?
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, just hit the mark. I think you're right. I think, let's put a mark up there and let's hit it. Let's do it together. Let's do it in a way that we all feel like we were contributors. Everybody gets recognized, everybody gets to contribute, and everybody gets to feel good about what we accomplished.
Yeah, well, you've helped me accomplish something today, because I always try and come up with the next book title for my guest. And your next book, everybody, please go and buy Gary Laney's next book called Just Hit the Mark. A story about authentic, a book about authentic. No, it's true. Just hit the mark. Instead of creating goals and stretch goals and, because it's like a negotiation. Why offer or ask for more or less than you want or would be prepared to accept? Just hit the mark.
I love it. I'm gonna write it down.
You better.
It's a good title. Yeah.
Jason Siv says, hero leadership is dead. Interdependent leadership is the new norm. Not one person can solve a problem. And I think that's exactly what you said earlier. Leadership is a team sport.
Yeah. Well, they always say there's no I in team, right? But literally, I mean, the collaborative style of a leader that cares about the people, really, literally, genuinely, authentically cares about the people they're supervising. I mean, and leading, think of the word lead. It means I'm leading, I'm helping you, I'm attracting you, I'm luring you to something that on a positive basis is going to benefit you and all involved. So we all need to work on that.
Now, Tom Morris is our resident philosopher, previous guest. He has a double PhD from Yale. So, I'll see your triple MBA and I'll raise you a double PhD. But he was a guest on the show. He became a contributor. And I never see in advance or hear or watch what he's gonna say. But this is interesting because it's called What's Right or What's Easy. And I think that I'm sure there's going to be an interesting leadership implication. So let's hear what he has to say today.
Okay.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Morris. I came across a poster online today that said very simply, do what is right, not what is easy. And my first thought was, well, that's good advice, but it almost makes it seem too easy to do what's right, ironically. It's an interesting thing. Early in our lives, sometimes the distinction is very clear, right? Doing what's right can feel really hard, and doing what's easy comes naturally. But the interesting thing is, the more we grow in wisdom and in virtue, which was the goal of all the great philosophers, the more we grow in these things and mature as human beings, the more we decrease the distance between what's right and what's easy. In fact, the better a person you become, the easier it gets to do the right thing. So to advise people, do what's right, not what's easy. First of all, it's not always the easiest thing in the world to see what's right? There are morally difficult situations. So just telling people to always do the right thing, well, okay, but that elides over a lot of hard thinking and a lot of hard choices along the way. But to say to people to avoid what's easy, that assumes that we're just talking to people who aren't very spiritually mature, who aren't very far along in their personal growth in wisdom and in virtue, because as that growth happens, it becomes easier and easier to do what's right. Now, it can be hard to climb up the side of a high mountain, but once you're there at the top, it's easy to see far. Happy philosophizing.
That was awesome.
I didn't understand what the hell he was talking about, but
I do.
Explain it to a Luddite like me.
Well, so I don't know. It's been 20 years ago, at least. I had an opportunity to be a VP of sales for a new startup that was doing well, apparently. and it was being funded by some of the best VCs in Silicon Valley. And I went through my due diligence, and I decided to take the job. So we negotiated the offer. They wanted to have kind of a big deal, and have me come in, sit around the board table with the board and the lead investors, and have me sign it, and then have a celebration. And so I did all that. And so I got up early in the morning. My wife knew I was going to accept this position. I was excited about it. Best offer I'd ever had, I think. Parked, went up to the office. They brought me in. Everyone was there. I was the last one, I think, to arrive probably. And they were all ready. You could tell they had things ready for the celebration. And they give me this document. Today you just do a DocuSign, but back then they give you a document. I've already read through it, so I kind of knew what it was. They just want me to sign it so we can move on. And they gave me a special pen. I grabbed the pen. I pulled it out to sign, and I had some hesitation, and I didn't understand why. So I literally tried to sign that thing 3 times with people on this board table looking at me, expecting, anticipating, and I couldn't do it. I had in my gut, I had a feeling there was something wrong with this company. And I didn't know where it came from. And the easy thing to do would have just been sign it. And I could have quit, I guess, if there was a problem later, but I couldn't do it. I could not muster up the strength. There wasn't very much to put that pen on the paper and sign my name. And so embarrassingly, I stood up and said, "I'm really sorry. I can't sign. I'm not taking the job." And I walked out and thinking, "Oh my gosh, what am I going to tell my wife? How am I going to deal with this?" Anyway, about 3 or 4 months later, I got a call from the VC, venture capital person, who said, "It's a good thing you didn't sign that." So we found out there was a lot of things going on in the company that were not probably legal. They were fabricating revenues. They were doing things that they really didn't have the clients they said they had. And of course, being an outsider and not having signed it, I didn't have any access or contact with their clients. And of course, they don't want you to talk to them until you're signed anyway. So that was important to me to understand that the hard way, doing the right thing. And I'm the only one that could decide what that right thing was. Somebody else can't decide it for you. And I didn't understand why it was the right thing. I just knew I couldn't do what I was there to do. And so it taught me a valuable lesson in life. And I've several times since then had to be honest with myself, say, what does integrity mean to me? And what do I need to do? Can I live with a decision if I do it? Or do I just not feel comfortable in moving forward with this? And I've followed that methodology, and it's served me well. And have I given up opportunities a couple of times where I was a little too sensitive? Probably have, but I have to follow my real me, the authentic me, and do things based upon what I really feel. I haven't shared that story probably publicly ever, but listening to his speech was something that triggered that.
Well, I'm humbled and honored that you did share it with us, and I think it helps. It's the same concept as the manifestation and the vision, which is when you put it out there, you never know who's watching or who's listening or whose life you might touch or change or inspire or validate for a decision that was made or not made. So I certainly appreciate that. Guess what? Tom Morris is watching, and he said, "Great story from Gary." Signing that document, which on one level was the easy thing, had become the impossible thing because of his wisdom and intuition. So, Tom, I'm glad you're watching, and I did actually understand what you were saying. I just like to tease him. Keep him humble. Keep him humble.
That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we did get to, this was easy. This was right. Interviewing you and having you on the show today. It was great to get to know the authentic you. We didn't even get a chance to just embarrass you slightly and find out some more things about the authentic you. For example, we did get a sense that you do like the number 3. But did you know that Nikola Tesla was obsessed with the number 3 as well?
Did not know that.
So in doing it,
Wow.
he was obsessed with the numbers 3, 6, and 9. Hopefully not 666. But a little bit of research for you as well afterwards. We also did find out that, of course, I mean, who hasn't been? I'm kidding. You were once lead singer and bass guitar player for a band that you co-founded.
I did.
So there you are jamming, and then this one, I have to say, there was one more, which is you were involved in 20 startups, one of which you helped take public, and later became part of the Office of the President. And I was thinking, wait, that president or a different president?
Yeah, different president. Yeah, the company was during the dot bomb era, we used to call it, and companies were losing. It was great for a while, and everything started falling. And the board wanted to bring together the critical pieces of management and call us the Office of the President. I've never done that before, but it's me. It was the CEO, founder, and it was the CFO, and we performed as the Office of the President to make some decisions. It's kind of cool.
Well, if you want to find out more and about Gary's leadership, his thought leadership, and how he can help you, there are many ways that you can do that. One thing we didn't even get to ask you, but don't follow him on Twitter, because I don't think you're on Twitter, or at least you intentionally left it off. But instead,
my book has a little place there. I have not promoted it, so I'm sorry. I'm really LinkedIn is my thing. So
yes, well, you can connect with him on Facebook /Metabook. On the World Wide Web, of course, on LinkedIn, where you have that's how we connected as well. You can subscribe to his influential leadership newsletter. You've just launched a business mastermind named Strategic Business Leaders. Of course, you can buy the book wherever books are sold. The #1 Amazon bestseller, The Power of Strategic Influence, 10 Success Factors of Highly Influential Leaders. Gary, I can tell you with 100% certainty, confidence, transparency, integrity, and trust that I am on first name basis, not really, with Chuck Norris. But here's what he had to say about you.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
And I will be back next week. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.